Welcome back to the next part in the build of the Warbirds Replicas FW190. I'm now rocking this Arctic headgear because this morning in the garage it was somewhat chilly. I don't know what the temperature is now, just bear with me. Alexa, what's the garage temperature?
The garage temperature is 3.5 degrees.
3.5 degrees. Positively scorchio. Anyway, to continue. So I'll just wrap up the front end of the, literally wrap up the front end of the fuselage. Have a look at how I got on with the ply, the thin ply, and the fitting of the plastic parts around it. And then we'll lead on to the rest of the fuselage and finishing off only the top surface, because I want to leave the underside for when we fit the control push rods, because it makes it easy to thread through. Okay, so back to the building board. Back on the building board, I've sanded my plywood round the edge, the front edge, right the way round, and just sanded back on the insides there. So hopefully now, when I offer up the cowl ring, that'll be a nice fit, which it certainly is, with not too many gaps, if at all, between it and the ply. And of course the real tester is going to be, does this fit in there now that I've sanded the edges? So just slide the hatch cover in there, pull back the pin, there we go. That's a nice fit there as well. Now at this stage I wouldn't be too, well, not at this stage, but at any stage of this build I wouldn't be too concerned about joints showing here and here. Let me just take that off, and also the cowl ring and the cowl. And I wouldn't be too concerned either with joints showing between the gun blisters here and here, because this was a panel on the full size. This is a panel. It's got over center latches down here. Okay, it's not shaped like this, it's shaped up and it steps up, goes like that. I'm not going to bother doing that. You could be thinking, well, I should put this, relieve the surface of the balsa so that this sets flat. No, don't leave it so that this sticks proud, because it is a panel on the full size, so it looks more like the full size. Okay, so don't overly, or don't overthink that, is my tip. Right, let's just take that out. Now another thing I will say, and I'll come back to it later, you can see I'm struggling getting the hatch out, even though it's not an absolute tight fit. It's because there's nothing to grab hold of. So what I will be putting is a bit of reinforced tape stuck to the inside there, just to one side of the pin, and then bring it up to the top, double it back on itself, so there's a little tongue there that I can grab hold of. Not huge, but a little tongue I can grab hold of. It's the way in which you would have something to grab hold of if these were held in with, if this was held in with magnets. And some of you may choose to actually do this hatch with magnets. Just put a couple of magnets in there and have a bar inside the cowl, so that just plonks down on some magnets. Entirely up to you. I'm sticking to the plan. Talking of which, we now come on to the rear of the fuselage. As I said a little while ago, I'm not going to infill here because the push rods are going to come through from here, the control push rods for the elevator and rudder, and I want to be able to guide them in easily. I'm going to use what came with the kit, which is dowel for the push rods. Once again, normally in my builds I would use snakes, or I may even mount the servos in the rear. Not on this one, because I suspect that we're going to need the weight up the nose anyway. But yeah, normally on a build like this I would use control snakes going through, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stick with what Richard designed because it's a simple traditional way of doing the push rods, and we'll stick with that, and I'll show how to do those. So I'm going to have a look at this rear deck first of all. In fact, let's just move that across like that without it falling on the ground. There we go. Let's just get that rear deck piece. It's the piece in the kit. He says that he can find it. I had it a little while ago. There it is. It's a bit like a tuning fork there. The slot there is for the fin, and this sits on top of the deck here. Line up with the rear there. And the idea is you'll stick this on and then you'll sand that to profile. Sand that to a nice profile to give it a nice round combing to that. I've seen other people on the forum do this to their models, and that is to infill a part of this opening here, and I think that's a good idea for two reasons. The full-size Focke-Wulf, if you think of the cockpit of the Focke-Wulf, the pilot sits about here, and that's the cockpit, and that was an enclosed space. You've got your nice canopy that goes over the top, but that was enclosed, so you're making it more scale-like if you enclose that. But also that is quite, well, not flimsy, but it flexes quite a bit, so that would add strength for the mounting for the cockpit. So I'm going to do that with mine as well. I'm hoping that there's sufficient balsa offcuts in the kit. If not, then I'm going to have to raid my parts, and this is where obviously I am sort of digressing from the kit. I'm building something that's not part of the kit. You don't need to do this, you can skip this bit if you want to. But before I put that bit on, I'm going to add some reinforcing pieces to the inside of the fuselage, sorry, the cockpit sides here and here. Why? Because my canopy, I'm not going to stick it on. I'm going to use small screws to screw it on. You can't really screw through, well, you can screw through bolts, it won't hold very well. Even with cyano applied, the holes are not going to be that brilliant. So I'm going to put some thin ply. Another useful material to use would be an old credit card. Cut that into strips, and you don't need more. I'm going to probably put one there, one there, one there, one there. So probably 4 to hold each side down, 4 screws. Now, why am I going to screw it down and not glue it down? I always prefer to put my cockpit canopies in place using screws, because I may want to later add a bit more detail inside the cockpit. I'm going to put a pilot in here, a 1/6 scale pilot anyway, which doesn't come with a kit, because personally I don't like models flying around without a pilot. So the pilot's going to go in there. So I may put the back of a seat in there, I may put a bit of a dash in there. I can do that later, I don't need to do it now. But in order for me to be able to replace the cockpit canopy as and when I want to, I've got to have it removable. So that's why I'm going to be using small screws. And you can get small screws, they're readily available. Modelfixings.co.uk. Not sponsoring this at all. I haven't got any sponsorship for this whatsoever. I've had to pay full price for everything, including the kit, Richard, or kits. But modelfixings.co.uk are brilliant. They supply loads of different fixings, hence the name, including miniature screws that are ideal for screwing in things like maybe canopies, engine cowls, cockpit canopies, that sort of thing. So I thoroughly recommend going to see those guys online and getting the parts you want. So I'm just going to rummage around now in my balsa stock. I'm going to get a bit of balsa that's going to go sort of about from there to back there, and I'm going to cut that to size. Once I've done that, I'm going to also put my strengthening blocks in place on the inside of the fuselage so that I can attach the cockpit canopy to them. Right, I've cut the rear of the cockpit cover there and pinned it on, as you can see, and I've put the balsa coaming down the back here. One thing I suggest that you do is where the ends of the balsa coaming are, the tuning fork ends, don't glue that section yet to the sides. The reason for that is because ultimately we're going to have to fit the fin in there, and what I would suggest is you fit the fin in place, and then these can then be pinned against the fin and they can bend in independently of the sides there, and it should make for a better fit. Just a suggestion, you don't have to do that way, just a suggestion. Okay. Another advantage of leaving the underside open at this stage is that to push these sides out to go in line, I can just put a ruler up on the inside and just push them out to pin those in. Makes it easier. Going back to the, say, not part of the kit, this top section here, what I will be doing is moving that forward so you can see it. This top section on the actual full-size plane, this top deck curves down behind the pilot's seat there. So I will be putting a vertical piece or angled piece of balsa down there later, but I'll probably leave that until such time as I'm going to come back to the cockpit, because another thing that needs to be done if I want it to be more scale like is the full size, the cockpit, while the sides, the fuselage sides come like that, the inside of the cockpit and the instrument panel comes more like that and across the top, and then the instrument panel goes down at that angle. But I am talking about scale detail, and at the end of the day this isn't designed to be museum standard or true scale. It's designed to be a quick build, and any fiddling around like that will slow the build down. So like I say, I'm gonna rein back on what I'm putting in because I need to get this built, and I've set myself a target of the end of January. This has got to be ready to fly. So we are at the moment the what are we? We're the 15th of January. So I've got a couple of weeks which to finish this off, and hopefully it should be enough. I'm going to let the fuselage dry now, and I will probably then turn my attention to the wing. And the reason for that is that where the wing joins the fuselage, oh, and by the way, if you break off the bottom of the fuselage like I have done there, that's what it should be like. That's what it is. Don't worry about it, because there is a triangular balsa fillet that's got to go in there, which is the junction between the wing and the fuselage, and that will cover that, so don't worry about that. But that's the reason why I want to build the wing next, is because I want to offer it up to the fuselage and show you how to apply the triangular balsa. If I can get hold of a piece. So it's some of this triangular balsa here that we used for the longerons for the fuselage. This has got to be fitted to the fuselage side, bent round and down, which is obviously well, sorry I say it's obviously, it can be quite a daunting task for for people to do that. So I want to spend a bit of time going through how I approach that process of forming that fillet between the wing and the fuselage. So that's why I'm going to build the wing next of all.